Chapter 6, Bridges of Faith, 2006. I wanted to be in that spiritual place where I was a year ago, on fire for the Lord. Before Paul came into my life, however, I was far from that place. But through mercy and grace, I can throw up my hands and say, "Thank you, God, for His favor." In spite of my shortcomings, many mistakes and fleshly desires, the Lord did not turn His face away from me. I sat and cried many days wondering how could I have avoided some of the steps that I took. Finally, one day, I raised my head and wiped the tears away. While participating as a vendor at a gospel play around 10 months ago, Christmas of 2005, I remember having a conversation with a woman regarding her ministry. Butterflies are free. We made a connection and exchanged business cards. Sometimes opportunities can come in disguise. I started to see the importance of networking. I received an email from the woman requesting for some inspirational bookmarks. She asked me if I could write a poem for her ministry, in addition to 5 poems specifically for each woman. It was for a celebration ceremony. She gave me their names and other particulars to start with. It was a good shift for me to have a new business client. I met my client downtown at the Chicago Yacht Club to give her the order. While she was looking everything over, she read the poems. Then she began to speak things about my life and my future. I felt assured that God still loved me because she was pleased at how well I knew what to say for each person. I was discovering something new about my gift. Meanwhile, I was still unemployed. I received another disability check for September. I received another call from my representative at CareMed to inform me that I was officially no longer eligible for benefits, and for the 3 months that I received a check, I did not have to repay any of the money. She stated that I should have received a letter concluding termination of my case and information if I chose to appeal against it. There was no need to complain about their decision to end my benefits. I knew that God extended it when I received 3 more months of pay. I needed to concentrate on the direction I was heading. Therefore, I checked the mailbox after getting off the call with CareMed. There was a letter from CareMed and a termination letter from World USA. I decided to apply for unemployment allowance. On the next day, while driving to the unemployment office, I kept thinking that God is with me. As long as I make 1 step, He'll make 2. I passed a wooded area along the way that was secluded from the main road. I saw a little bridge sitting off to my far right, and then the Lord gave me an inspiration, Bridges of Faith. After returning home from the unemployment office that day, I had received a voicemail from the local school district regarding an interview. I did apply for employment with the school district a few months ago via internet. I remember sharing with a friend how I would feel if I got that opportunity to work for the school. It would be great. I was still excited about it, so I scheduled an interview the next day. At the interview, I sat in a conference room with a panel of teachers and staff. Since the interview went well, I was scheduled for the second interview that same week. I had the time to ponder over some of the questions that were proposed to me. How would I respond to different scenarios, and what a typical day would be like working with the students? Before leaving the school, the other secretaries informed me right away about the chair and the pay cut. I was surprised to hear such comments on the first interview. After the warning about the hot chair, I started to reminisce about the stressful times when I worked at World USA. I felt relieved and was stress-free from multitasking and working weekends. I seriously started evaluating if this was something I really wanted. On Friday, I had my second interview with the school. The interview went well, and I felt hopeful about it because I knew an acquaintance of one of the women that interviewed me that worked at World USA. That connection was in my favor. I believe that it put my name at the top of the list of candidates. The principal concluded that he would call me the following Monday once he reached his decision. I left the school's parking lot feeling optimistic and good about myself. I felt God's favor as I went along my way. Now that the ball was in my court, I needed to be certain if that was the career move that I wanted. I reasoned with knowing that it would be a big pay cut from the sound of it. I had to think hard whether it was worth it, although having the summers off would be the biggest incentive. Then I suddenly remembered the hot chair and how much stress it could entail. When I got back home after taking off the clothes that I wore for my interview, I sorted through the mail. I noticed a piece of paper from the unemployment office. I opened it to see the decision that was made. It was in my favor. I started smiling while I read the letter again. I recall on the day that I went to the unemployment office, the representative that took my paperwork was very kind and expressed a few words of encouragement. I thought to myself that it is rare to find someone working behind the counter in this type of capacity willing to give a word of encouragement. I could see well how God has his hand over my life. I felt emotional and thankful because I did not have to go to battle or struggle. I only needed to have faith and take the next step. Since I could breathe and ponder about the direction I wanted to go, and regarding work, I felt that I had a little more time over the weekend to decide. I called a prayer warrior and asked her to stand in agreement with me while I prayed for God's direction. On Monday morning, the school's principal called to offer me the job, but I declined it. He wished me the best in my endeavors. I was able to reach my decision after I sought prayer. Therefore, it became clear to me to proceed with my business. Paul and I continued to speak over the phone as little as possible at the end. We disagreed about everything, and that made it harder to talk. During the conversation I had with him a few weeks ago, the night of the toy party, I said that I was no longer going to walk with him on his journey. I think he did not believe me. I wondered if I should have clearly said that our season was over. At the time, I thought that I needed to be sure more than ever before I spoke. I didn't want us to part as enemies or not be able to speak to each other. The emails went on for a while longer between us. He tried to pull me back in by accompanying him as a friend to attend some of the usual events that we did together. I kindly declined and stood firm. This time I realized where I needed to cut it off. I was ready to embrace having my joy and freedom again. I knew for sure that God was forming a bridge by meeting all my needs. He made a way out of no way for me to get through my financial struggles. I didn't need to look to man, but keep my eyes on him. I started accepting more invitations from Reverend Shout to attend some of her church events. We attended several churches in Chicago and Indiana. Reverend Shout seemed happy when she would shout in church. As I reminisced a few months ago, while having lunch with Reverend Shout, I was expressing my feelings on how many Christians have abused and misused their spiritual gifts and have tried to mislead me through their tactics. I was so tired of running into people that came to me acting one way and then changing for the worse. I was praying and hoping that I could for once meet someone that was genuine. However, her response was logical advice that I already knew. As you spend time with a person, you will see if that person lives by what he or she says and believes. In retrospect, little did she know that I was observing how things were between us. The more time that I spent with Reverend Shout, we started to become friends. I enjoyed her energy and attitude about life. We laughed and shared some of our past life's ups and downs. I would have never guessed that she was married because she had a lot of freedom. I just assumed that there was a mutual understanding between her and her husband because they were in ministry. The difference was he had retired as a pastor, but she was still active. My days seemed full because I kept busy However, I have struggled with the feeling of loneliness, especially after a breakup, but I learned over the years how to channel that energy and time into doing something positive and productive to help me become a better person. Finally, I was able to concentrate on my business as I brainstormed a better plan to produce a mass of bookmarks. I wanted my bookmarks to be appealing and stand out among others. I knew that they were different and a gift from God. Back in the day, I remember sitting for hours making handmade bookmarks. I love doing it because there's a peace that comes over me. But as my life continued to evolve, among other changes, I knew that there had to be an easier way at making bookmarks. My desire grew stronger to start mass production of bookmarks. Therefore, I shared my thoughts with Reverend Shout, and she had suggested that I could use her huge HP printer. I declined the offer because it was not still the solution I was looking for. I needed to free up more of my time and focus on other avenues to grow my business. I felt that God was urging me to seek by browsing the internet to find print houses that did mass printing. I did a search on bookmarks and hundreds of websites popped up. I felt excited after thoroughly searching for two print companies. There is something special that comes over you when you can see a vision being manifested right before your eyes. I started the process of having three of my best bookmarks printed. They were Preparation, Breakthrough, and The Roses and the Thorns. The day I received my bookmarks in the mail, I fell in love. It was an awesome feeling. The fall was here as the clocks were set back while daylight savings changed the course of time. The wind blew hard and sturdy as winter took its course. My heart started feeling things that it had not felt in a while. I started pondering about Emery. Emery and I met at World USA. It was late summer of 2000. We had become acquaintances over the years. As time went by, we both had experienced a divorce. He had always expressed an interest in me. I was flattered, but I never looked beyond that. While checking my emails one day, I was surprised to get an email from Emery around the time I had walked away from Paul. He was expressing how he was in school and he had purchased a new home and things were going well. We arranged to meet for dinner to chat about what else was going on in our lives. However, I didn't have my hopes up because he was known to cancel at the last minute. We met for dinner at TGIF one evening. While we were talking, I felt comfortable enough to share some of my frustrations and the painstaking adventure of starting my business. He offered to create a website for my business. I asked him about his fees, among other questions pertaining to what information he needed from me. He replied that it shouldn't take him a long time to finish a website. His other response was why it did not make sense to him that no one else was able to complete it. The dinner went well because there was absolutely nothing to expect but enjoy each other's company. I felt hopeful and optimistic leaving the restaurant. I prayed that this would be the beginning of new opportunities and better results. I started thinking about many things and the time when he called me around October 2005. Shortly after, I had the vision of the wedding at the altar. Emery was a mild-tempered and soft-spoken man. He was a family man that seemed to always care for his children. I was impressed knowing that he was responsible and caring toward his children. Sometimes we would have lunch or catch a movie after work. As far as I could tell, he never gave me any reason to give him a hard time in getting to know me. He always acted like a gentleman and carried himself well. However, there were times when he would call me sporadically and then he would disappear. At the time, I did not know that it was a part of his baggage. It was disappointing at times when we'd planned to have dinner and then he would call to cancel, but I didn't hold it against him after his apology. I never took the time to personally get to know Emery, aside from the times he was there for me, like the time when he suggested where I could purchase a refurbished computer for a good price and assisted me with getting it upstairs into my apartment and setting it up. On another occasion, I felt myself seriously getting sick at work, and Emery dialed my extension and he offered to go to the store and pick up for me some fruit and medicine for cold before I left work to go home. He also offered to come to take care of me and make for me some of his favorite soup, but I declined it. The next occasion, when I moved to my second apartment, he went to the store and bought a plastic runner that I needed for my apartment. He asked me, when will I invite him to dinner? I never offered him dinner at my place, primarily because I never considered dating him. In retrospect, he did express that he was interested in me, but I did not know how to respond. I was either involved in another relationship or doing some soul searching, so I gently ignored what he was hinting at. But that never discouraged him from calling me over the years. The next day, after meeting Emery for dinner at TGIF, I wrote out the information that I wanted to appear on my new website. After he received the write-up, we discussed where and when we would meet. This time, I felt since I had known him for a while, I could invite him over. The day that Emery came over to my home to meet me regarding the new website, Jacob was home as well. We sat down at the dinner table to eat the dinner that I had cooked that evening. During dinner, I shared with him that I had finished writing Rhythm of Rage. He replied that he remembered the first time when I told him that I was going to write a book. It was some years ago at World USA. Then he said, I wouldn't mind getting married again someday. I felt a small part of my flesh starting to rise. Then he mentioned that he started writing his book because I had given him the inspiration a while ago. I asked him what was the name of his book, and he replied, My steps have already been ordered. He expounded on some of the times in his life when he did not think that he was going to make it and how God answered his prayers. I felt connected and excited to hear that he was revering God for the things in his life. Once we finished eating, I cleared the kitchen table before we started discussing the new website. However, Emery needed access to set up my account online for my web domain via computer. I had a single bedroom apartment and Jacob occupied the front room, but my computer was set up in my bedroom. It felt awkward to have him in my bedroom, but I wanted to keep things decent, so I left the bedroom door open. Emery sat down at the computer and did what he needed to set up my web account. I remember feeling excited because I was satisfied with the website and knowing that I finally made some progress. It was a major achievement for me to make it that far with all the difficulties that I encountered. Things seemed to start falling right into place. The cost was affordable and I was pleased with the work. The snow fell while the wind blew hard most days. One evening, Emery called while he was on his way home from class to ask if we could get to know each other better. He assured me that he was not in a relationship. I listened intently and I replied, I will embrace you. He was amazed by it and quickly got off the phone. He was apprehensive about it because he knew that it could ruin our friendship if things started to go bad. We agreed together knowing the consequences of our actions. I was exhausted and ready to get away from the dating scene, and in my heart I believed that Emery was the one who I felt I was willing to give a last chance at love. After we crossed the other side, things changed. My heart started to grow fond of him. I fell in love and started to yearn for his affection. I wanted to spend more time with him, but he was in school full-time and working. But there was something missing in the picture. I felt confused and did not like the way I was feeling about love. It was a huge distraction that hit me like a lightning bolt. I accepted the crumbs and little time that he gave. Being in love was not the fairy tale I dreamed about. After making a serious move, I wanted to walk away from him, but my heart wouldn't let go. Although he did assure me that there was no one else, I was still unsure if it was true. I asked him in detail, if he was seeing someone else, and other questions about his previous relationships. I thought to myself, how can I get back to the other side where my heart was not leading the way? When Reverend Shout asked me to accompany her to visit Indianapolis, where some of her children lived, I accepted her offer. I had a friend that lived there as well, and I desired to see her. Jacinda and I have always enjoyed each other's company. Through the years, I would visit Indy and she would come to Chi-Town, but time didn't permit us to visit each other often because she went into business with a friend. They had opened a Jamaican restaurant called the Blue Lagoon a year ago. As soon as we made it to Indy, we picked up Reverend Shout's family and drove to the restaurant. We had a wonderful time feasting and talking. We took pictures and everyone seemed to enjoy themselves. The food was exactly what the newspaper articles wrote: superb and delicious, the best Jamaican cuisine in the Midwest. While visiting one of Reverend Shout's daughters, I slept alone in one of the bedrooms, and I had some time to myself to ponder. I was excited to take a road trip so that I could clear my mind. Somehow, I could not get a hold of my emotions or stop thinking about Emery. I did not know what to really believe about him. As I wandered down memory lane on how we met, I realized that we were friends, but now I wanted something more. As the days went by, I did not hear much from him, although this was not new behavior. In the back of my mind, it felt that way. I believed that I loved him, and then I thought about the verse in the Bible where it talks about throwing your pearls before swine. How could I have allowed myself to fall into a snare? The next day, I tried masking how I was feeling about the confusion that was going on in my mind. The visit was only for a night. We got dressed the next morning, heading back home to Chicago. I had given Reverend Shout a package of bookmarks to pass out to people that she came in contact with. While talking, she suggested I'm passing a few to an influential woman who sold Mary Kay. Through her, she believed that it could potentially open a door to an opportunity. I remember seeing the woman she was speaking about at a prayer breakfast. Reverend Shout spoke about the anointed oils and handkerchiefs that she makes. Then she briefly expounded on how we can merge our gifts and work together. Somewhere along the lines, she was suggesting that whoever got their first million will help the other. I smiled as though I was agreeing, but I wasn't sure about who she was at that point yet. I listened, but I knew that I was not feeling the concept of combining my purpose with anyone. We both had two different callings, personalities, and God given assignments. I remained calm and pleasant, but I couldn't wait to get home. I had good thoughts and bad thoughts about her. She was an extrovert and considered herself a leader. I knew I did not want to work closely with someone that did not exhibit humility as a strong trait. She exited the freeway, heading to the casino in Indiana, just 30 miles outside Chicago. Our primary reason was to catch the lunch buffet. We knew that the casino food was seasoned well and agreed to have lunch there. While searching for a parking spot at the casino, she got loud with the other drivers that exhibited no patience and blew her horn. She was by no means turn the other cheek kind of person. On another occasion, while we were out together searching for a parking spot, she got obnoxious toward the other drivers, seeking a parking spot as well. Sometimes the other driver was in the wrong, but I felt that it was not necessary to make a scene. I could tell that her nerves were bad because she would start yelling loud outbursts and warning me that I may have to take the steering wheel after she finished kicking someone in the you-know-what. I immediately saw flashbacks when my mother was acting like a fool in public. I did not want that type of drama in my life. It was nerve-wracking. The trip to Indianapolis was eventful. I was at peace when I made it home safely, but I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go back anytime soon. The original plan was my spending the Thanksgiving holiday with Reverend Shout's family and her son, this time in Indy, was still pending. Since I couldn't stop thinking about how I was feeling about Emery, I wanted to talk to someone. I thought hard about it, and while having some lunch one day with Reverend Shout, I decided to confide in her. I spoke about the dream that I had about the wedding at the altar. She seemed quite interested while listening to me. I didn't know what to think of that at the time. During the week of Thanksgiving, her son flew into town and the plans were still on to drive to Indy. I received an email from Reverend Shout detailing that she was going to call me when she got off work that day. There was a part of me that wasn't excited about going back on the road again with her. I was at home cleaning and listening to some soft jazz. I couldn't figure out how I was feeling about the matter. Then I remembered that we were supposed to share a hotel room together. She had frequent flyer miles and points to stay at the best hotels, but I started feeling deeply uncomfortable about it. Since I had not reached a decision to let Reverend Shout know that I changed my mind about going to Indy, I called my oldest son, JR, to express my concerns and thoughts about her. He listened and expressed his opinion that I should follow my first mind. I felt better after talking to him because he seemed so mature and wise for his age. I leaned toward following my first mind in this matter. The next day, Reverend Shout called to inform me that she was with her son, the acclaimed author. She said that they were on their way to having lunch with the saleswoman who sold Mary Kay, the woman she mentioned to me the day we rode back from Indy a week ago. She also stated that she would let me speak to her son, but I might start getting close in the wrong way because he was my brother. Somewhere she lost me by saying that he was my brother and wanted me to believe that's what she meant. When we were out together at different events, people assumed that I was her daughter. I could see why someone would think that way because I was close in age to one of her daughters. However, I was not her biological daughter and was appalled by her remark concerning her son. I didn't really know how to counter that remark except by saying that I knew how to behave and asking her what on earth was she talking about. The conversation was cut short and she said that she would call me later, sometime that day. When I hung up the phone, I concluded that she was playing games by stringing me along and there was an ulterior motive. I sensed that I had to appease her in order to meet her son. I was not obsessed about meeting him. I had his email address and plenty of time to have established dialogue, but I remained patient and professional about it. I was hoping to meet him in person to discuss his journey and ask him some things about the publishing business. There was obviously a reason for me meeting Reverend Shout, but it became apparent that it was not about meeting her son. We both had different agendas. The difference was that mine was through pure friendship with no strings or games. Since I was not dancing to her tunes, I didn't appease her. My chance of meeting her son was slim to none. I was relieved when she pulled off the mask after running around all over town to this place and that place with her. I knew that it was not the lifestyle that I wanted. I detected that there was something missing in her life. When people are empty inside, they seek outlets and vices to keep themselves preoccupied. I know it to be true because I was one of those people. I made it a point to avoid her phone calls and emails. I called one of my prayer warriors and shared my feelings regarding Reverend Shout. She felt that I was doing the right thing by disassociating myself with Reverend Shout. A week later, I received an email from Reverend Shout. She wanted to know how was my family doing and how was my Thanksgiving celebration. I responded to her and put in the subject line, all associates. I will not be responding to any emails because I am on a sabbatical. The door to that detour was finally closed. Sometimes it's not easy when it's time to walk out of someone's life. If I could leave peacefully, there was no reason to look back. I prayed for peace between us and wished her well. I looked to God to send me the friends that I needed. There was no reason to have any hurtful feelings about the matter. She did not have a heart for me. Sister Nolan was one of my prayer warriors that lived in Detroit. In retrospect, I met Sister Nolan through my cousin Paris. She had met Sister Nolan while they both were incarcerated. Sister Nolan had some miscellaneous parking tickets, and her charges were dismissed. When Paris was released from jail, she remained in touch with Sister Nolan. Since Paris spoke highly about her and her daughter, Asia, I had hoped to meet them someday. Sister Nolan was very kind to Paris. She would pick her up for church. Paris lived across town, but Sister Nolan did not allow that to stop her. While spending time together, it renewed some sense of faith again in Paris's life. Sister Nolan could say a prayer that moved things in the universe. Paris spoke of the things that happened simultaneously in her life after Sister Nolan prayed for her. One evening, I received a call from Paris, and she shared some of the blessings that she was experiencing and spoke about Sister Nolan. I asked her if she would three-way the call so that I could meet her via phone. One thing for sure about prayer, it does not cost anything if someone is genuine, willing, and has the faith to believe with you. I know the power of prayer. It can comfort your mind and heart in your darkest hour or time of need. I am much wiser and I'm leery about many things because of my past experiences. I am conscientious about who I ask for prayer. During the phone conversation between Paris, Sister Nolan, and me, I asked if she would say a prayer for me before getting off the phone. While she was praying for me, it felt like a mighty wind ushering. I had never heard anyone pray like that before. I could tell that she was sincere and an intercessor. I asked if I could have her phone number, and she gave it to me. Through the connection, Sister Nolan and I formed a bond. When I spoke to Asia, her daughter, I could feel her kind spirit and the intelligence that exuded around her through the phone. Asia was eager to meet me after receiving some of my bookmarks and reading some of my other writings. I felt compassion for the Nolans. I believed that they were put in my path at the time. After several phone conversations, I learned that Asia was attending a prestigious preparatory high school and was excelling well in her subjects. She was lacking in turning in some of her projects on time because she didn't have a computer at home to allow her to do research and type her papers. Therefore, she and her mom spent late nights at the library. I did some research on the internet for prices of computers and found a reasonable one. I purchased the computer and had it shipped to Asia. I wanted to bless her, and I was in a position to do it. I had learned to never allow anyone to change the good that is in my heart, no matter how many bad experiences I encountered. It was not about the money or a motive for me. It was a blessing to be able to meet someone else's need when that person needed it the most. Sister Nolan believed that through our prayers and divine connection, we bonded like real sisters. She trusted me enough to allow Asia, her only child, to visit me, even though we weren't blood related. She felt apprehensive at first about Asia taking the Amtrak to Chicago without her. There were many things to factor about why she wasn't at ease about her coming alone. I was a total stranger, and Asia was only 16 years old. I could understand her motherly concerns, and if it was my child, I could have never done it. While Asia was visiting, we had a wonderful time. We took pictures together at the mall. We felt what a coincidence it was that we both had almost the same outfit, a dress and jean jacket that we wore that day. We went window shopping and to the movies to see Dreamgirls. I cared for her as if she was my daughter. I had always wanted a daughter, and she fit right in with Jacob and JR. Asia stayed a whole week with me. I made sure that I put her back on the train safely, heading back home to Detroit. Somehow, I seemed to draw people, but this time it was a pleasant experience. If there's a spiritual connection, it's usually noticeable in the beginning. I'm compassionate toward kindred spirits because it's easier to get along with someone that possesses similar qualities like mine. The experience was unforgettable. We both wrote a poem dedicated to each other. It seemed like a short dream. What can happen when we entertain angels? The poems, Angels in Play, and A Colorful Friendship are two worlds apart that share a strong belief about love and faith. Sometimes God will unite people on their journey to restore the love, laughter, and childlike qualities that He adores when we are exhausted by the troubles of life. I welcome the distraction because it reconnected me with the times in my life when I wanted to know what it feels like to be treated special with no strings attached. I saw the light in Asia and I was blessed in turn. Through the experience, I was therefore touched in many ways, for seeing how I once looked when I was 16 with great ambition and drive. If only someone had fought hard enough for me to stand by my side, but I'm grateful for all things. It only reveals to me that I am destined to make it through the rain, storm, and sunshine. As I age and wisdom sets in, I am often reminded to whom much is given, much is required. The holidays had passed as everything seemed to settle. The New Year's wind whistled through the dark nights. While another year was on the horizon, it was 2007. I needed the momentum as I began to strategize my job search again. The weeks were drawing near to when my unemployment would soon run out. This time I knew that I had to secure a job, for that meant my survival. I updated my resume and immediately enlisted with a few temporary agencies. I had ventured down a path of temping, and that allowed me to get back on my feet quickly. I felt hopeful because of the results I had in the past. While checking my email one afternoon, I received an email from Sister Hopewell's daughter. She wanted to know how I was doing. I was unsure if I should respond to her. I waited a few days and prayed over it. I felt because it was the beginning of a new year and I was expecting great things to happen, I decided to respond. Some time had passed since the last time I spoke to Sister Hopewell. I was feeling liberated and much stronger after my breakup with Paul. Since I never disclosed him to her, I knew that I didn't have to discuss that part of my life. I was petitioning my prayers to God for a new job and desired to know what I should do next. I felt a sense of belief that if I opened that door again, maybe Sister Hopewell could give me a word of prophecy. I felt secure enough of what I should do in case I needed to close that door again if things became one-sided. The prophecy that I received this time was about my future husband. I got very quiet while listening to Sister Hopewell. I was hoping that she would tell me something that I didn't know. I started to understand that God was not allowing her to see far into my future. I decided to disclose to her the vision that I saw with the man at the altar and about Emery. She said that he was wavering and fighting God and felt that he was going to suffer greatly until God renewed his mind. I asked her if he was going to preach and she replied yes. While listening to her, I felt chills because I knew the power of God. He can put stumbling blocks in a person's life when trying to get his or her attention. Then I felt it in my gut that there was going to be more spiritual warfare. I pleaded to the Lord after I got off the phone and went into prayer. I didn't know or understand why God would allow me to go through more suffering when He already had my attention. I had totally surrendered to the call on my life. I needed to have His mercy on me.